Hello and welcome to the Emotionally Focused Therapy Podcast, hosted by EFT trainers Michael Barnett, Dr. Sylvina Irwin, and EFT supervisor Michael Preston. We are excited to bring you this first season of the Emotionally Focused Therapy Podcast, Foundations, where Michael, Sylvina, and Michael will be breaking down the fundamental elements of EFT, helping to build your confidence as an EFT clinician.
Welcome back to the Emotionally Focused Therapy Podcast. My name is Michael Preston, and I'm joined with my co-hosts, Dr. Sylvina Irwin and Michael Barnett. How y'all doing?
Great.
Doing well. Thank you. How are you doing?
Yeah.
I'm good. After we're finished wrapping up here, I'm running over to the Bend, Oregon externship.
Wow,
So
nice.
huge shout out to Dr. Edward Yu here, who has been hammering away at the EFT here. I think he did his training like 3 years ago, but he just fell in love with it. And there's not really a massive community. So he just started building one.
Wow.
And we have a ton of students, a ton of his former students who are at the externship. I think it's 50 something people are here.
Great.
Learning EFT. And most of them are because Dr. Ed was like, I love this model and I want to see it grow. And he's doing it. So shout out to Dr.
That's
Edward.
Shout out.
very cool. Definitely. That is not an easy feat, to
No.
gather folks and really spread the word and ignite the flame, right? The fire of
Yeah.
EFT. That's awesome. Wow.
That's a lot of hard work. That's great. And I've heard Bend is just breathtakingly
Oh
beautiful.
my goodness.
Again,
Oh,
amazing.
Dorothy came with me, which is super, super lovely that she was able to come with me. We walked after training, we walked to dinner last night and we were just like blown away. We were just like taking pictures every few steps. Like, oh, and this rock is beautiful and that house is
Uh,
beautiful. And look at this river that runs through town.
Yes. All right. Well,
It's gorgeous.
we expect the full report.
Yeah, it's amazing. And the training's going really well. Everyone's super engaged. So it's a lot of fun to be here.
That's so cool. Wow. I had no idea.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why my background is different today.
Okay.
Wonderful.
So just engaging in the old EFT nomad life.
Yes, exactly.
It's par for the course for you.
It is. It is. I love it. I love meeting new communities. This is
Mhm.
really fun. But we're not here to talk about new EFT communities. Today, we're going to be talking about Move 4 and then maybe touch on Move 5 towards the end. But we're going to be discussing Move 4 and the challenges that we can face in Move 4. Because as we know, this part of the tango, this 3-4 moment is the real interaction between the couple. And this is where the wheels can fall off, right? The couple can find themselves activated in different ways. And it can be really challenging to help hold couples in this moment. And it does take a good bit of focus. So if we can start with kind of a big zoom out and first begin to answer the question for everyone, what is the aim of Move 4? Big wide one.
That's a big, wide one.
It's a very, very good one.
Yes. Well, what is the aim? Well, to use your words, Michael, Preston, right? This is a relational moment, right? We've been doing the hard work of move two, going inward and helping someone make sense of this moment when they're off balance and struggling in the relationship. And usually they go to their reactive strategy. We worked really hard to make sense of that moment, to engage some vulnerability, and then set up an enactment in move three. And now we're having them bring this to their partner. And it is a moment of a lot of vulnerability. We've created a new step, right? Typically, folks are in a more reactive or protective place. And here we've really set the stage for a moment of connection. Now, there are no guarantees in terms of what direction that's going to go in,
Yeah.
but we've set up an opportunity for a new way of relating with one another. And it's highly experiential. And we've worked really hard to get there. So this is a place where we want to build some safety. Like, well, hey, I just showed my tender underbelly. Can I be met by my partner in this place? Partner can see something different happening and can speak to what it feels like to see their partner taking some risks with them. And so we are really wanting to put the floodlight on this moment of a new step in the dance happening right here, right now. We're interrupting a cycle. right? We are interrupting a cycle and creating a possibility for a new way of showing up for one another. So it's really, really important. And we build off of this. These are like moments of safety that are being created in our office in real time, hopefully.
Yeah.
I know it can go sideways, and I know we're going to talk
Yeah.
about that.
Or
Yeah.
not.
Or not,
That's what we hope
exactly. But
for.
then we have to make sense of why, right?
That's right.
Which again is
Right.
where a lot of the juice is. So either way, a lot happens in move four. Either safety created or it goes sideways when we make sense of why so that we can get to safety being created. So those are some initial
Right.
thoughts.
Yeah. So I like that you said we have exposed the underbelly of one partner,
Yeah,
right? We have brought the vulnerable moment forward, and we're bringing a spotlight for their partner to be able to respond to that in a way that begins to build safety. Yeah?
exactly. It's
Okay.
creating a new way of engaging. And we're helping them have the conversations that they so need to have that they can't have, either because it's gotten unsafe between them, because of injuries, because of history, family of origin, right? We're creating opportunities to have conversations that they desperately need to have.
So there's essentially kind of a new moment in the relationship. And if we kind of keep our eyes on the prize, right, we're looking at the cycle and they've been stuck in a very negative pattern. And so we work really diligently and deeply with people to help them understand what's under the reactive step and move to and help them feel the pain of it so they can actually bring that directly to their partner. But because it's relational or it's a system we're working on changing or a cycle we're working on changing, we've created this new step and we're really hoping to almost close the circuit, like a person who has just gone inside and activated and found their narrative that's usually very painful and then been able to feel it and bring it to their partner. They want to know what their partner's response is going to be, right? So we're
Mhm.
making inroads into this really negative interaction that's been running the show and causing them so much distress. So here in Move 4, we've shifted that. We've helped the person that we're working with who's done the enactment go beneath the reactive tendency into their distress, right? And what we know about false security is when people do feel secure, they lean in, they go to their partner in a time of vulnerability. And so we're trying to facilitate that moment, right? And it takes both of them to facilitate that moment. It's the send and the receive. And
That's
now
right.
there is a different step in the dance, right? It's the beginning of creating a new dance, right? We're changing the system, we're changing the cycle. So
Mhm.
it's
Hmm.
that's all to say it's really, really important.
Yeah.
It's it's so important. The other thing I just wanted to add, when you are the person who has taken the risk
Mhm.
and to actually be met with a partner that says, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know," and "Oh my gosh, thank you so much for telling me, and I really wanna understand you." It's powerful, and that gives the message of, "Maybe
Mhm.
it's possible for me to begin to share more," and so these risks and safety begets more risks and more safety, so we're
Yeah.
building off of these moments, and again, we're talking about stage 1 right now.
Right.
This is a necessary ingredient for stage 2. Right? So we
Yeah.
have to create these experiences.
Yeah. This is where they're learning to be responsive, and that's what we need them to be in stage 2, is they need to have access to a responsiveness to their partner rather than move
Yeah.
into reactivity.
Yeah. And have some experiences of, okay, I can do this. My partner will show up.
Yep. And so when we are working to bring kind of a caregiving system online from the partner, and I think I like what you were saying, Michael, it's we're changing the steps in the dance. And just like the negative cycle, it's like when we do this, your partner does this, and when we do this, your partner does this. But we're saying the same thing is true in this cycle. When you lean in this way and your partner comes forward in this way, two steps are changing, right? The reach and the response are different in this way than in the cycle.
Yeah. I think one of the things that's so powerful about it, and one of the things that a lot of us, I'm sure all three of us too, have struggled with is most of us are trained very well in individual therapy. But you don't get a lot of marriage and couples or family therapy training in graduate school. So it's really easy to get targeted on one person's distress or
Mhm.
of the cycle or the system, right? What we're doing is we're changing the system, we're changing a pattern. And every time there's a successful move for an enactment, and then someone responds well, and meets people meets their partner in an attuned way. It's starting to not only make an inroad into the negative cycle, but it's starting to create something new. And to your point earlier, Michael, when you were saying, this primes us for stage 2, One of the things that happens is people start to so intimately from the inside out understand what goes on in their negative cycle that it starts to inoculate the stage two process to some degree or to a great degree from the cycle hijacking it, right? If people fall off, and get tripped up, they know why, and we can bring them right into this work that they've done here. But part of it is kind of the responsiveness to that risk and that reach, right, is so critical, right?
Mm.
It's about the relationship in that moment. It's not about simply the person's individual emotional experience. There's a different move now. There's a different way. They're in the same moment that would be a trigger moment and create disconnection, but in these moments, they're creating a moment of connection from the same emotional space. That's powerful, but it takes both of them to do that, right?
So our aim is to bring that response forward. And I think one of the challenges that the very first challenge that we're going to encounter is in the moment we turn to the partner who's just done the listening and we ask them to respond. And in my early days of EFT, I would say something very simple like, what is it like for you to hear your partner share this? This is I've learned that is a I get a wide range of response when I do that. And it also invites them to respond to the content of what their partner just shared, which can also get them a bit twisted in that moment as well. So, how do we help couples stay focused on the process, the new step in the dance, rather than leaning them in toward and steering them. And that's what I'm saying was part of my what would could really make my sessions go wonky when I was first learning EFT was I would steer them toward the content, not realizing so much what I was doing there. How do we help couples stay focused on process rather than leading them towards responding to content?
Mm.
You offer two different avenues, really. One is when people respond to content, and one is when the therapist asks an open ended question. And they're both really important. And the way that cuts through all of that is to focus on process. So, in
Mhm.
some ways, you're asking a question that offers an answer,
Yeah.
which is really important. So, to dovetail off of what both of you were saying, is we are creating a new move in the dance, right? It's the dance that we're changing. The new move is, if we say it differently, is process. What did somebody just do differently?
Mhm.
What did they do differently? So oftentimes, to be very specific, might say something that offers a contrast. As I'm going to the partner receiving an enactment, I might say, right now, can you feel there are two questions, and y'all are sick of me here saying this because I say it all the time at trainings, but there are two questions I would ask. One is, can you see a version of, can you see your partner being vulnerable? It's
Mhm.
yes, no, it's binary. So people are saying yes. And one of the things someone told me a long time ago that I've turned over in my head a billion times is they said, in therapy, we are essentially becoming more and more focused on how we direct people's attention. What do we want them to be focusing on? So we
Mhm.
say, can you see your partner being vulnerable now? And then the contrast would be they're not being angry. They're not bringing anger or criticism, for example. Instead, can you see the tears in their eyes? Yes. To go to process, so now we're talking about there's a new way. What does it say to you when your partner shows up this way with you?
Mhm.
And now we're talking about the step, the way, the process. And that's really different when you ask somebody about the meaning of the new step and you're bringing into focus, they did something very different than what you're used to receiving. And in some ways, in a secondary way, it's very validating to the receiving partner because we're naming what it's like for them on the receiving end of their partner's negative step in the dance too. We
That's
know
right.
you're often criticized here. So it's very powerful. We're talking about here's the old step and here's the new step, but we're doing it in a very simple way. So to unpack that general phrase of process, right? That we're now giving detail to the process. How do you see your partner doing it differently? What does that mean or say to you? And that directs them to talk about something very different than saying, so how was that for you?
Yeah. Yeah.
So leave this room, right? This is not
Yeah.
how you do it at home. You're just doing it for Michael or you're just doing it for
Yeah.
Sylvina. You would
Yeah.
never to me like this at home. Well, that's not really where I wanted this to go.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love that. Like it's these a simple way of asking them to notice. Do you notice your partner's shift here? Right?
Yeah,
Do you notice this moment your partner's leaning in not with anger but with vulnerability? Or do you notice your partner's leaning in instead of leaning out?
beautiful.
Yeah. So anything to add to how you help focus?
No, I think that Michael really honed in on it. I guess the only thing I would just add is how important that focus is because to both of your points, it's easy. Like when we're listening to our partners say something for the first time, it can activate so many things. And then the person who took the risk can get lost if we're not focusing it on what they just did. And then they're just
Right.
kind of left out hanging while we go down some rabbit hole. So it feels, really critical to focus our process on what just happened right
Yeah.
here, right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I was speaking to a participant about this moment, and they kinda sat back and they said, it's funny because we've been talking about this model as a process-focused model the whole time, but then we come to this moment." And they said, and I appreciated the self-reflection, because the participant said, "It's so easy for me to want to go to the content. Oh, it would be really easy to move toward what was shared rather than noting the move in that dance, because it's just easy to go there."
And sometimes it's really juicy what they share,
Yeah,
in on that part, but it doesn't help them see the change in the dance, right? We're
yeah.
working from that perspective, and that can be hard for all of us to keep our eye on that prize, right? You know?
I do wanna say that content does have a place though in the sense of it is creating a new narrative of what happens in these
Right.
moments.
Absolutely.
We're focused on process in terms of, like, the systemic piece, right? When I move this way, it impacts my partner this way, and this is what happens. When I bring my vulnerability, this is what happens, and, oh gosh, look at how we're shaping a new way of being together.
We're talking about finding a way to bring that caregiving response online and to their partner in order to build safety.
Mhm.
If we start with a very open system, and let's say you go to the partner and you're asking them about what it's like, what does it say to you? What are you hoping to hear, help shape a little bit, and send back? Does that make sense? Is that clear?
Very.
Like
Mhm.
what is yours like? Ooh, green lights. I love it when I hear this, and this is what I want to get across.
Yeah, I appreciate the question, and obviously, our hope is that when someone shows their vulnerability, that they're met with kindness and compassion and care and understanding. We just want that for folks, of course.
Mhm.
I also want to say that it is important to let go a little bit of holding on to a particular outcome because we need to make space for whatever comes up is exactly what needs to come up. It's what the couple is living with. And now there's a witness and a guide to help with whatever comes up. Because if there is a block, it's what's happening at home. I know we'll talk about that in just a moment. So I just want to hold on to our
Mhm.
hope
Yeah.
that we're all going for loosely
Yeah.
because that doesn't always happen, especially with couples that are in massive distress.
And
Hope for the
right out the
best,
gate.
plan for, and be prepared for anything. What
Yeah.
was that,
I
Preston?
was gonna say also right out the gate, like new couples who are doing this for the first few times are rarely gonna have that access to that so quickly.
Totally. Right. Our job there is like, all right, let me drop a little vulnerability in the room and let's see what happens. And hopefully it will go well. But if it doesn't, all right, well, there's the work.
Mhm.
So I want to hold on to that loosely. But to answer your question, our hope is that they can respond to their partners and in a way that says, "Wow, this is amazing. I can really see, how much you're risking right now, and
Mhm.
I want to understand you. Your pain touches me. They want to feel impacted. We want to see them be able to lean back in towards their partner who just took the risk. That's what we're ultimately trying to facilitate. And we may not get there at first, but we find our way there.
Yeah, just to
I don't
be
know, Michael, wanted to
very
add.
attuned and very receptive, right? Their partner just took a risk, and we're hoping that there is some kind of response that says, I see you took this risk with me. This is different, and it really means a lot to me. And here are
I
the ways it
care.
means things to me. Because then a person who has taken a risk feels really received, right? There's an acknowledgement and a validation of what just kind of the risk they took and the vulnerability they just brought. And then there's also kind of a response to kind of a kudo to, hey, what you did is really important. This makes me feel so much closer to you. I'm really delighted you can trust me on this level, right? My heart just feels so warm right now when you share in this way with me, and I feel really close in this moment. I want to be in this with you. That's really powerful, that kind of response. So we're looking for an attunement. And the reason I say it that way is because it's different for every person, right? So there's not again, I guess this would kind of echo a little bit of what you were saying still, but from a different angle, which is, again, you use the phrase holding loosely for what kind of response we would get, but attunement is very personal and subjective, right? So the way somebody shows up when they're leaning back in, right? They're feeling pulled toward their partner from that reach. We want to help them really kind of be responsive in that way. So this person who has really no idea about how this vulnerability is going to land, all of a sudden has this lovely experience, right? That's very powerful. And it's not what their brain is predicting is going to happen, right? It cuts across that grain that the
Mhm.
cycle sadly has created that pathway that, it's probably not a good idea to open up very
Mm.
vulnerably here because usually this goes sideways in a painful way. So the partner's response, just being really attuned to the risk, really attuned to the person, attuned to the challenges of bringing a new move into the dance. That's a big deal, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love being able to kind of put some markers, things to be looking for. One is can the partner see the new move? Right. And it says there's hope for us.
Mhm.
It tells me that there's hope for us. And I feel close to you when you share that way with me, or you let me know that. I had no idea that was going on for you. I want to help you in that place. I don't want to be the cause of that. And when we can talk like this, I can find a way to help you. So that's really sweet. And I want to go a little bit further with this. Normally, we are looking at minute 43. Like we're coming down the wire of our session here. But there's a phrase that you all have used from the time I've trained with you all that goes all the way back to Sue, which is minding the moment. So we get this really lovely share. We have a wide open system of responsiveness, and then what do we want to do right here? How do we help them mine this moment and get as much out of this interaction as they can?
Mhm. Burnett, you wanna take that?
Sure. Well, I mean, I guess this is going to sound very silly, but it may not always occur to people that that's important. Right? We see, the 3 of us were having this conversation earlier, people just kind of
Mhm.
through move forward, but really holding people in that moment. For example, if somebody I say, "Well, this is really good and I really appreciate it. I know how hard that was for you and it means a lot to me." And I might unpack that and I say, "Wow,
Mhm.
you said some powerful things. Can I ask you what's good about it or what you're appreciating about it?" It helped people be more and more explicit because then they start really processing it. And when they name these things, well, what I'm appreciating is I know you're not really vulnerable with anybody, and to be vulnerable with me means the world to me. And I might even say to that person who's the recipient, what are you feeling on the inside right now as you're saying, I'm aware that you're not even vulnerable with almost anybody that way, but you're bringing this to me. What's happening? And maybe the person gets choked up. I wonder if you could just turn and tell your partner how meaningful this is. Maybe you could talk through the tears in your eyes right now. So if we stay there, we're really helping people have a really deeply integrated and very thorough experience of this brand new moment that's emerging. And it's something that can kind of be internalized deeper. And now there's more of a felt sense. I know we started talking about move forward as a form of creating safety, but there's much more that sense of connection and safety in that moment, especially when it is enacted back from an emotional place, for example. So we're letting people savor a really hard won moment, right?
Mm.
And that's the thing. Sometimes people want to rush away from it. Like I was doing a session yesterday, and this guy is in the industry, and he's a fast talker. He's an agent, and he's da 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 da. And his partner brings something up, and he gets triggered, and he shuts it down, and she goes into a tailspin. And this time, he said this one phrase about his intention. And what I was really hearing him talk about is feels in these moments that the person he loves the most is doubting his intention, doubting
Mhm.
his integrity, doubting his self. And we stayed there for a second, and he began to cry for the first time. I mean, this is a guy who's pretty
Yeah,
slick.
he's moving too fast to cry.
Oh, so that's
Yeah.
that's his business, right? And so he leaned in, and his partner got it for a second, and then she went running off into the event that they started talking about. And I had to keep bringing it back and just say, "You said something so important to him. Can you stay there?" And then she got all choked up, right? And I just had
Mm.
back what was happening. And when she shared that back with him, it was a really powerful moment. And this is the kind of moment this guy in particular, is not used to having. So it's so powerful to stay there. And I think, just one thing is we may not always have been taught so well to just stay in that place. It's very important. The response is really important because it now it is so interactive and the meaning is held between both people in this new
Mhm.
thing they are co-creating together, right? It's super important.
And I think there's also value in making that explicit, some version of that explicit to our clients of like, "Whoa, this is really different. Can we just stay right here?
Yeah.
Holy cow, look at what you just did. What is it like to have taken this risk and be met with your partner just showing up, coming right alongside you in this place, right? We really can make that explicit about how different this is and anchoring them in the experience, which I think also, I don't want to leapfrog too quickly, but it also dovetails into the importance of move five to really integrate what they just did because
Yeah.
it can be a very emotional, intensely emotional process. And so that move five really helps integrate it and put a kind of coherent narrative around what they just did and gives them a reference point of like, holy, look what we
Yeah.
just did. Look at what we're
Yeah.
capable of.
Yeah.
And when we can create a narrative around it, it gives the possibility of like, we can do this again. Look at what we just
That's
did. We
right.
can do this again. We just learned a new dance step. This is what it looks like. This is what it feels like. This reference point can be replicated.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so important.
I think about, that moment where someone gets a new response in response to their new move. And you were saying, so like, what is, that moment where it's like, here your partner is staying right with you. And I think about this is I had a supervision where I had a highly traumatized client and their partner was sitting right in that spot with them. And I did move forward and I passed that response back. And was talking with about what's that like for you to have your partner right here with you and then move into move five. But the one thing that I didn't do that was really helpful to begin was asking where that lands on your body.
No,
Mhm.
When your partner does this, what does that begin to say to you? And the man was able to say, "I feel safe." And it was, where does safe begin to feel? Like, where do you
Mhm.
really begin to feel safe with your partner? And oftentimes, this is for the first time someone comes to
Yeah.
this spot in my life and I begin to feel safe. And now I have a spot to anchor that somatically and then to hang there. And
Yes.
how
Beautiful.
important that moment is to give it enough time for someone to locate it and say, "Oh, this is where that feel." It begins. My chest begins to loosen up a bit rather than stay tight, or that knot in my stomach begins to go away, or the weight on my shoulder begins to lift.
Mm.
And it's so powerful to stay there, and I use that phrase a lot as well when I say, "Can I stay with you here for a moment?" And I have a few clients that when I go, "Can I stay with you for a moment?" And they will immediately get to you because they know what I'm asking them to do now, but they will often say, "I wish you wouldn't."
I'm like, let's move along.
Yeah. No, can we please keep going? But then to be able to move that into that move 5, as you were saying, and just be able to kind of step back and say, "Wow, look what you all are doing here." Right? There's
Mm.
a lot of moments where we could have gone a different direction, right? The cycle would have taken us away. And I'm gonna come back to the challenge in a second, but since we talked about it, I'm gonna say I I had a moment where I did a 3-4, and then in the processing it, the one partner kinda went, "I don't know if they're really present with me right now." Right? I usually can feel them a lot more, but I don't feel them as present. But they started getting into their own narrative about it, but we slowed down, and then she just turned back to her partner and said, "Are you really present with me?" And he was able to say, I am, and this is meaningful, but I've also got this other thing here. It's just kind of weighing on me. And when she goes, okay, well, that does make sense. But they made sense of what was happening between them. And so it was a great time to reflect with them, like, look what you all just did. The cycle would not allow that level of curiosity to come into your relationship. Right. And then you leaned back in and you were able to kind of take in where he was. And I remember the client went, "You're right." Like it kind of just the laying it out there was like a light bulb went on. Like, "You're right. We did just do that."
yeah. So you reflected a process that would have just gone right by them otherwise had you not stopped and said something, right? It's a very
Yes.
meaningful moment to them. That's great.
Hey, everybody. This is Michael Preston. First of all, I want to say thanks to everyone for the incredible response to the first Tango Deliberate Practice group. From the time I did my EFT externship, what impressed me about EFT was the community's commitment to working on their own skills, even after grad school. The first deliberate practice group filled up faster than I expected. So I've decided to open another group that will start this March. It's open to EFT therapists everywhere. If you're new to EFT, consider this. The research shows that therapists don't automatically get better simply because of experience. In fact, many therapists show a decline in effectiveness over time. But Improvement hinges on deliberate practice, self reflection, seeking feedback, and supervision. So, if you missed out on the first deliberate tango practice group, or you just want to hone your skills as an EFT therapist, consider joining the deliberate EFT tango practice group on the second and fourth Thursday starting in March. Full details are available at www.michaelprestonlpc.com/tango. All right, so let's shift a little bit into how this can go when it doesn't go so easy and it's not a wide open system, but we hit kind of a half block, and we go to the partner and
A
we say to
stumble.
them, yeah, there's there's a recognition that one partner can have and say, "Yeah, I can see it," and you can kinda hear it in their tone that, "Yeah, I can see it," right? It's not that warm and open tone, and the easiest one that I can think about is when pursuers get to this spot and they'll say, "I can see them doing something new. Yeah, I see it, and I'm glad to hear it. I even appreciate it. But you know what? It's probably not gonna happen again, and I'm gonna have to wait another week." So there's this bit of mistrust in that response, and for good reason. But how do we walk through this challenging moment where someone's responsiveness isn't quite there and their mistrust is a little bit more prominent, but we at least can have both in this moment?
Mm.
I think, we were talking about something very similar when we did the episode on Move 3 challenges. And that is, first thing I would say to therapists is nothing's going wrong.
Mhm.
Right? Nothing's going wrong. If we think about one aspect of therapy, it's like a laboratory, a connection laboratory. And we have just set the stage for one person to lean in a way that by all means should create connection. But if a partner receives it and says, yeah, it feels it's just that's kind of where they are. That's probably going to be happening at home. And so we have an opportunity there, and it's an important moment. So let's just clarify, this doesn't have to be a bullet. This is just somebody saying yes and yes, but some version of that. There's not hostility coming forward.
Sure. Yeah, yeah.
So it's important. And what it offers us is an opportunity to embrace and honor both parts of the person's experience and just say, so what I'm hearing is one part of you can really feel your partner show up very differently. And this other part is saying, I don't know if I can trust this or take it in hook, line, and sinker just yet, right? This may not be the thing that's going to happen out there. Now, the therapist has a choice, in my opinion, and it depends what the couple's needs are. But I could say, would it be okay to take this in steps? And maybe I feel like they really need to capitalize on this new vulnerable moment that has been kind or sweet. And I say, can we just take this in steps? People usually say yes. And I said, well, let's start with the first one. You said you could experience your partner being more vulnerable and showing up differently. It'd be okay to stay here for a little bit. We'll get to the other part. And they'll say, yeah. And so we say, well, what did it say to you? Tell me what it said to you. Your partner just kind of brought this to you without their normal step in the dance, without shutting down or without freezing you out. They just shared a lot. And so we could really capitalize on that. Or if it feels like going with a block, we could say some part of you just isn't really ready just yet, fully to take that all the way in. And what we could do is really validate that from, the cycle's been hard on you all. And I
Mhm.
was wondering if we could just stay here for a second. And we would help that person kind of process the rebuffing or the ambivalence as kind of the action tendency there and get behind what led to that. What's the narrative that the person is more in touch with in that moment, that they weren't able to receive it? And my hope is always that the person who did the initial enactment, once this piece has been processed through with their partner, the next time they do an enactment, the partner is going to more readily be able to receive them. We've kind of looked at where the block in the plumbing is, and we've kind of done a little emotional plumbing work there and remove that and help them process it through with each other. But that's going to happen all the time. And that I would just say for y'all out there, you're not doing anything wrong. And it's a very instructive moment in terms of the way people process and hold emotion together.
Yeah,
So I know
absolutely.
I kind of threw a lot of spaghetti on the wall there.
No, it's awesome though. It's really, I mean, what you're speaking to, it's like, oh no, that moment reveals something really, really important. And we just are making it explicit. It's right up on the surface so that we can make sense of it. I think the only bit I might add to that are a couple like intermediary things where, if someone's just taken a risk and their partner is kind of split. I see you did something different and it's really hard to take in. On the therapist part, it feels important to acknowledge the risk that was taken. Like, okay, hey, you just did something different here. That's a real big deal. I'm really seeing that. Let's make sense together of what's coming up for your partner as they're listening to you, as they're taking this in. So the person who took the risk feels also held in a process, not just like, oh shit, excuse me. Yeah, hey, I just did something and I'm not being met, and that feels really crummy, right? So that's sort of like a little intermediary step. Let's just acknowledge the risk ourselves. And then I love, Barnett, the way that you were talking about using parts language and kind of organizing the experience. And then how important and valuable it is to either, depending on, your clinical, sense of the process, whether you have that person pass it back. I really see you. I see that you took the risk. It's hard for me to take that in, but I
Mhm.
really see you did something different, and I don't wanna discourage that. I want this to continue even if it's hard, right? We do want them to be able to pass that message back, either directly, or we can run that through us to the person who took the risk, depending on, our sense of the moment. But we need to be able to talk about that moment because that's what's in the relationship.
Mhm.
This has been revealed, and we need to be able to have a conversation, make sense of it, and integrate it so that we can work through it. It's like
Yeah.
massaging a knot, right? That's
Yeah.
that's how we do it. You gotta lean into it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
have a lot of knots in my back, and so I know about leaning into those knots. It's not fun, but we have
No,
to.
it's not. It's not fun at all.
But I do wanna say how important it is because as therapists, maybe we want to like, "La, la, 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 la," like, "No, this is great. Let's just talk about the part that can hear them, and let's just, like, amplify that," right? We have to at least name it all. We may make a
Mhm.
clinical decision, just talk about one part right now, but in our mind, we need to bookmark that and say, "And we need to go back to this other piece
Yeah,
because it lives in there. It's there."
that's right.
What is it that therapists wanna do in that moment?
La, 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 la. Our listeners can't see that, but I just stuck my,
Uh,
fingers in my ears and closed my eyes like, "I don't wanna see this. I don't wanna deal with this. No.
Yeah, it's
Let's just
I hear
talk
the
about the
song
good part."
la 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 la, la 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 la.
And the therapist breaks into song.
Yeah, I think I think that in when that happens, I think there is so much that happens in the therapist, whether it's the half block or
Totally.
the
Oh
full block,
gosh.
that we often say it's gone wrong, which according to our last episode, we are all know now this has not gone wrong, right?
yeah.
It's what happens in the reality of their relationship. And we're
Mm,
going to help massage that moment. But there's a lot that happens because we are also thinking, no, I think this, if I can name what can happen in my mind, which is, oh no, I've just asked somebody to show their underbelly and they got a bit stung there. And I feel bad,
mm.
like regret, like a little bit like, ooh, regret that happened. And so I do want to go, okay, let's see if or start like interpreting. I think what your partner's trying to say here, and then create an entirely new narrative that feels better because it doesn't feel good when it doesn't go well, like in the way that we're planning or thinking. And so there's a lot of steadying of self in that moment. I think
Yes.
the therapist to kind of take a breath and go, okay, right? I'm expecting this kind of to happen, especially in the beginning. This is normal, and this is revealing the very spot that they need help, right? In order to move that. So if we've got kind of a half block, we can. I like a phrase that you've used a good bit, Michael, is, I can help leverage their own goals in this moment, right? I see that there's these two parts of you coming up, and one part says I can't. And yet I also know, and I say this a lot in my sessions, I said, I know you've also come here to find ways to respond to each other. And I'm wondering if we can take a moment and can I use the phrase pin? Can I put a pin in this piece and I'll come right back? I will come right back and we'll take this pin out because it's important. But can we work to see if we can find that part of you that's come here to learn to be with your partner and move differently with them? Often that's enough for people to say, yeah, I can do that. If they know, if they trust me, and that's a bit of a withdrawal from the alliance bank. If they trust me to come back and grab that pin and say, hey, there's also this other thing that just came up, right?
Mhm.
And I'm going to make space for that and let's explore what happened, right? That's a big, and that's why our alliance is so important throughout all of it because we wouldn't be able to do that without a good alliance.
Truly.
And then if it's a full block, it's really just the other side of that is we have to catch the person. We have to remember that some response here is better than no response, right? So if the therapist is the one having to acknowledge, "Hey, I see the risk you took, and something's come up for your partner," right? And so if it's a full block, we don't really have the option to part that out so much and choose one. We really got to go to the other side and figure out what happened to see if we can find is that part somewhere behind this big block that we can pull forward, right?
Mhm. Absolutely. And that's when that full block appears, the cycle's alive in the room, right? The vulnerability just kicked it over, right? And so to your point, Michael, yes, we absolutely just have to acknowledge the person who took the risk. Hey, I see you did something different. Let's make sense of what's going on here. And this is where I always think of Lisa Palmer-Olson, a friend, colleague, and also one of my mentors when I was a trainer in training down in San Diego. She would talk about, it's kind of a misnomer to say, catching a bullet as therapists, right? Because we're not catching any bullets, right? The bullet
Yeah.
has been shot and the bullet has lodged into
It
the
it landed. We
into the
didn't we
receiving
didn't stop
partner.
it, right? Yep. Yep.
It's more a matter of, okay, let's extract the bullet and let's make sense of what happened. Right. So that always landed for me when she kind of taught it in that way.
That's good.
Right. It
Yeah,
lands.
of course.
So yeah, so we want to come alongside the person who is really activated at this point and make sense of what happened for them, right? What got activated? Because again, if we think about here are couples, here are partners that love each other, they want something different in this relationship. Let's make sense of why, when we've set the stage for something different to happen, let's make sense of why they couldn't meet their partner in that moment that they've actually been longing for. This is what they want. And so we come alongside and we organize that moment. It's kind of like taking a sidestep and doing a bit of a move to. What happened for you?
Yeah,
What came alive? What did you start to tell yourself? Well, it just reminded me of all the times that I have been so alone in this relationship, and what I'm supposed to just show up for them now when I have been on a desert island and, on my last breath, and now I'm supposed to be responsive to their hurt. No,
Yeah.
thank you. When are they going to respond to me?
Yep.
Now their anger makes sense,
Yep.
right? And so we can come alongside them and validate, okay, well, that makes a whole lot of sense. On one hand, this is what you're longing for, and it puts you in touch with how desperate you have been for contact, care, and connection in this relationship for years. And so, yeah, this is where that anger comes alive for you. And that's what showed up in this moment, right? We make sense of it. We humanize that moment
yeah.
as
Yeah.
opposed to shaming them for what they just did, right? Or making them feel bad. That's not going to get us anywhere,
No.
right?
It really kind of illuminates, how when we work constantly from an attachment frame and an attachment perspective, how non-pathologizing it is and how validating of both people it is. Validating the person who got hurt, right? Man, you just took this amazing risk here while there is still a lot of friction in this relationship. That's no small, accomplishment. So bravo. Let's them know, hey, somebody in the room saw me do something, right? Come alongside them in a validating way. We're also validating the person who came out with some hostility or sharpness. But I love the way you kind of offer that example, Sil, because there's a one attachment phrase after another.
Right.
It start to move toward this person's humanity, right?
Mm.
It's not like this harsh, awful person that just is out there to harm their partner. I think this distress because they've been on the receiving end, whatever their partner's step in the dances for a long time. And now there's a human side that we can run. We can have the opportunity, like you're saying, to get underneath that. Can we get to the vulnerability that kind of culminated in somebody taking a shot at their partner? Right. And that's a very different way of working with these moments. A lot of models will not do it this way. You know, I started laughing at one point 'cause I was remembering this one couple I worked with a long time ago, and they were just very calmly, someone would take a risk. I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to call bullshit on that one. I mean, they would probably
Wow.
that part would be so vulnerable. I'm just going to have to call bullshit on this, you know. What they're essentially saying is, this is a side of you I'm not used to seeing.
Mm.
But it would happen at
Yeah.
the moments, but they would both do that. But here, in this model, we're just really honoring people's humanity. There's been a lot of hurt that hasn't been processed. So again, it's kind of very instructive that we set the stage for a really lovely moment of connection. And what happened instead is their partner showed up with hostility, what is that about? There's an attachment story there, right? I think you were saying in a recent episode, so that Allison Lee said, with every emotion, there's a story. There's a story.
Mhm.
Now, the action tendency was a hostile, like, attack. But we're going to see what was underneath that led to this attack. Especially, I liked what you said earlier too, Michael, about when the person's goal is often about connection. There's something really important. There's a story there we need to get to.
Mhm.
And it is a terrible feeling for the therapist. Wow, I just worked so hard to help this person be vulnerable, and it's kind of like on my watch, they just got
Mhm.
shot here.
Yeah.
That never feels good.
Exactly.
Right? That's a hard place to be from.
Yeah, that I think that's we'll wanna name that there, like, it is one of the hardest things in our session to see that happen, and I hope that each listener, whether it's a peer group or supervision group, can have a spot to talk about, like, "Oh, this is what happens to me when it doesn't go well," and when someone takes that vulnerable moment and turns it into an opportunity to criticize or just kind of get in at their partner because it is dysregulating for the therapist. And I think one of the best things we can do is talk about how we get dysregulated there so that we can also have some other voices on our EFT shoulder, on my little EFT angels that sit on my shoulder in my session that remind me
Mhm.
you're doing a good job. Take a deep breath, right? And
Yeah.
then go, okay, like, I have work to do still, and I've gotta steady myself a little bit, and then kinda
Yes.
dive back in and say, "Hey, what did just happen here?"
Yeah.
And begin to catch it and kinda zoom in and expose, "Oh, this is the story that we tell ourselves in these moments."
Yeah. What I appreciate about this discussion is, again, we have to be able to set these opportunities up for couples, enactments, essentially, right? And as a therapist, I like how you said earlier, Preston, like it can go one of three ways. Goes
Mhm.
well, right? Hope for the best. And it can have these other outcomes of a half block or a partial or a full block. And as therapists, if we can be prepared of like, okay, I've got my tool belt. Like I know how to work with a half block. Here are some ways I can work with this process, or here's a full block. Here are some ways that I can kind of move in and work with this process. Now the therapist, it can still be dysregulating because we don't want
Sure.
anyone, to get hurt. But if we feel like we have tools for how to navigate each of these scenarios, it's going to fall into one of those three buckets, generally speaking, right? And there are ways to work with it. So
Mhm.
practice, get into role play groups, set up the scenario. Here's my
Yes.
nightmare situation. Can we role play this? So that you can feel like, okay, I've traveled this road before. I have some skills that I can bring to this moment after I take that breath and ground myself.
Yeah.
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 And to your point, it takes a lot of reps.
Yeah.
The phrase that's coming to mind is when people say, sometimes cavalierly, trust the model, but it takes time. It takes time to be in these experiences and then find that you've navigated them well, and then for that to become something that you start to integrate, right? And then you can trust. I can move into these really frictiony, staticky moments where things are maybe going a little sideways, but we survive them and we actually help people find a way to get underneath them and
Mhm.
resolve the thing that was actually creating the block. But it does take time and it does take experience. And while you're in those learning curves, it can be very anxiety provoking and bring up so much self of the therapist content, right? So it takes time and practice, and just know this is just true to form. What we're talking about, this stuff really happens, and it just takes some time.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, we've got to wrap this one up.
Yeah,
It took me time. It still takes me some time. I can still find myself dysregulated when things don't go as I expected it to go. So take that deep breath, lean in, and keep working at it. I know it does. I will tell you, it does get easier.
it does.
It does get easier. All right. Well, it's good to see you all.
Great to see you too.
Great to see you too. Thanks for the conversation.
Yeah, it's been great.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Emotionally Focused Therapy Podcast. We hope this podcast is an encouragement to your EFT journey, bringing clarity and understanding of EFT to your work. Don't forget to subscribe on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcast to stay up to date with each new episode. To learn more about training or supervision opportunities with Michael Barnett, go to michaelbarnettlpc.com. With Dr. Sylvina Irwin, go to drsilvinairwin.com. And with Michael Preston, go to michaelprestonlpc.com. Tune in again next time to hear more of this great conversation.